ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let me express our deepest gratitude for your beneficence in giving your time and attention to such a peculiar topic as the subject of our disquisition, which is Schopenhauer's epistemology, or theory of knowledge. However, I assure you that it is a most timely and important topic, especially now when the cycle of violence and destruction threatens our very existence and with it all collective human knowledge. Therefore, we must inhabit the role of guardians of humanity ourselves, just like the monks during the Dark Ages or medieval scholars of the Islamic Golden Age who, during the times of strife and fear, diligently preserved the intellectual treasures of antiquity and ancient Greece. These guardians of humanity preserve the knowledge of the beginnings and development of astronomy, history, and philosophy, enabling us to hear from Pythagoras, Archimedes, Plato, and Aristotle, who continue to whisper their ancient knowledge, still relevant, reaching us all after thousands of years. In the first episode of our series In Pursuit of the Theory of Knowledge, we introduced the four categories or four classes of representations which encompass the complete spectrum of possible human knowledge. These four sources for our knowledge are united under the principle of sufficient reason. This principle is the ultimate basis of all explanation, which states that everything must have a reason for being as it is and not otherwise. It is the ultimate proto-scientific principle, because among other things it carries the notion that everything must have a reason for its existence and suggests strictly deterministic properties. Let me explain what we mean by the proto-scientific principle with the following demonstration. This should be also helpful to our new audience in introducing our methodology for argumentation concerning philosophical speculation, and by extension any argumentation seeking to establish the truth of proposed judgment. Whether you are a lawyer seeking to improve your analytical skills, a parent presenting your argument before the school board, or someone simply exhausted by scripture studies, myths, and fairy tales which are proposed as the ultimate explanation of human existence, then you will find that our program and Schopenhauer's theory of knowledge are an effective remedy against the pernicious and stupefying effects of dogma, fabricated narratives, and made-up stories. Any proper methodology that aims to convey useful knowledge must start with definitions that set the stage, so to speak, providing the initial rules for the game. Future misunderstandings stemming from the lack of definitions lead to disorganization, which is a recipe for confusion, and confusion is the arch enemy of useful knowledge. We are now working on my argument and demonstration in support of the proposition that Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason is a proto-scientific principle. Proto-scientific means that all sciences must follow this principle regardless of their particular subject matter. Let us start with Schopenhauer's definition of science. In his doctoral dissertation work, which is properly referenced in the description section for this video, Schopenhauer defines science thusly. For by science we understand a system of notions, that is, a totality of connected as opposed to a mere aggregate of disconnected notions. Schopenhauer later poses a rhetorical question and asks what exactly it is that brings these separate notions or ideas together, what it is that rules them all, brings them all, and binds them all together, if not the principle of sufficient reason. That which distinguishes every science from a mere aggregate or collection of disconnected ideas is the fact that scientific notions, judgments, and facts that are being proposed are derived one from another as from their reason. What does this mean? By way of demonstration, let us use an example from the domain of medical science. The practice of medicine often involves administering medication to produce a desired physiological effect. For instance, when a physician prescribes antihypertensive drugs to a patient with high blood pressure. Here we are dealing with a principle of sufficient reason of becoming, Schopenhauer's first class of representations, which pertains to causes and effects within the empirical world. The lowering of the blood pressure is the effect caused by administering medication, and both are part of the endless chain of causes and effects. The practice of medicine also deals with abstract concepts, Schopenhauer's second class of representations, that are governed by the principle of sufficient reason of knowing. Take, for instance, a patient who requires surgery. The reason for performing surgery isn't solely the medical necessity, but also the existence of an insurance contract, which is an abstract relationship based on abstract concepts, such as insurance law, which authorizes and finances the procedure. Here we are dealing with reason and consequent within the realm of abstract concepts. The insurance agreement is the reason that leads to the provision of medical services as its consequent. Theoretical physics, as an example of another science with different subject matter, whose latest achievements such as string theory are under some scrutiny, deals with the fundamental building blocks of the structure of our universe with time and space and their expressions, such as straight lines, triangles, or numbers. Here we are dealing with a third class of representations and with Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason of being, where the basic structure of our universe can be expressed through pure mathematics. The formal aspect of arithmetic and geometry are an inevitable consequence of the way time and space are structured. Take, for instance, Schopenhauer's explanation of reason of being in time, expressed through arithmetic. Schopenhauer states that every instant in time is conditioned by the preceding one, and only through this succession does the present moment arises. Since time is one-dimensional, each moment is sequentially linked to the next, forming a continuous and sequential progression. This connection is what gives arithmetic its foundation, as each number presupposes its predecessor as the reason for its being. As Schopenhauer explains, we can only reach the number 10 by passing through all the preceding numbers. Each step in counting is dependent on the one before it, and arithmetic, at its core, is nothing more than a systematic abbreviation of this process of succession. This illustrates how even in pure mathematics, the necessity that everything has its reason in something else operates, highlighting our argument that Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason is a proto-scientific principle that applies across all domains of knowledge. The fourth class of representations, the principle of sufficient reason of willing, introduces us to the realm of motives and inner causality, connecting our actions to the reasons that drive them. We call these reasons motives. Here we are dealing with our inner sense, our self-consciousness, which provides the most direct knowledge of our will. In fields such as criminal law, where establishing the proper motive can decide between guilt and innocence, or in behavioral psychology, which examines the underlying motivations of human actions, we can clearly see the operation of Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason. Just as physical effects in the material world have causes, human actions have motives. Here we are dealing with the inner nature of causality, where the true workings of human motives remain a mystery, because we only witness the external manifestations of these motives through human actions. However, the concept of necessity and determinism still governs this realm, binding actions and motives in an unbroken chain of causality. This demonstrates again that even in the study of human behavior, every action has its underlying motive, thereby reinforcing Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason as a foundational proto-scientific concept applicable across all domains of human inquiry. Esteemed friends and fellow truth seekers, our interest in providing you with these detailed philosophical and scientific expositions is threefold. First, we want to stimulate our mutual academic discipline and intellectual curiosity. Just as the gym or calisthenics provide a form of self-development through physical exercise, our brains and cognitive faculties need their own training. Second, we will try to rectify the regrettable trend of obscuring the proper understanding of Schopenhauer's philosophy, which tends to focus disproportionately on his ethical philosophy, pessimism, aphorisms about life, forgetting that for Schopenhauer, philosophia prima, or first philosophy, was epistemology, or theory of knowledge. The subject matter for the first philosophy, according to Schopenhauer, must be experience and cannot be spun out of pure abstract concepts, but must have empirical foundations. Another reference supporting our argument about proto-scientific quality of Schopenhauer's methodology. Third, these seek to restore philosophy to its rightful place, reclaiming its title as the mother of all sciences. In our next episode, we will delve into preliminary matters discussing Schopenhauer's doctoral dissertation work on the fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, which will serve as our guiding text. We will also mention some historical background information pertaining to Schopenhauer's times and his influence on future science. For now, let us finish with a direct message to his readers by Schopenhauer himself, who said the following: "As for the indifferent reader, he is free to let this and indeed all my writings pass down unread to his descendants. It matters not to me, for I am here not for one generation only, but for many."